St. Paul says, brothers and sisters, owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. A few years ago, I had the chance to meet the bishop of the diocese from Orange in Southern California. And over lunch, he shared with me a story. Mother Teresa in the early 90s was visiting his diocese. And she became ill while she was there. They brought her to the hospital. And to the surprise of everyone, after a few days in the hospital, her condition began to get worse and worse. And after about a week, the bishop gets a phone call from the doctor saying, Bishop, will you please come here as soon as possible? We don't think Mother's going to make it through the night. And she has an agreement with the Holy Father that wherever she is in the world at the time of her death, he will contact her and bless her. I'd like you to be here when he conveys that blessing. So the bishop made his way to the hospital. He arrives, he goes to the little room that she's in. There are a number of sisters, missionaries of charity, along with the doctor. The bishop goes in and the doctor's on one side of the bed, so he goes to the other. And Mother Teresa is there, apparently sleeping. Her breathing is very strained. She's wearing a breathing mask. And the doctor says, okay, we're expecting a phone call any minute. It's best that I answer the phone as an official representative of the hospital, and then I'll hand it to you so that he can impart his blessing through you. He says, Bishop, whatever happens, Mother Teresa cannot talk to the Holy Father. If she removes that mask, she will die. The bishop says, okay, I understand. The phone call comes. Yes, Holy Father, this is Dr. So-and-so. Of course, we were expecting you. Let me hand you to the bishop. As soon as he extends his arm across the bed, Mother Teresa rips off her mask, reaches out, and grabs the phone. The bishop and the doctor look at one another stunned. Okay, if she's going to die, she's going to die, right? And you don't steal back the phone from a living saint. Mother Teresa grabs the phone. She says, Holy Father, this is Mother Teresa. I am dying. He says, yes, Mother, I know that you are dying. She said, Holy Father, will you give me your blessing? And the bishop said she very slowly and reverently made the sign of the cross. And then she said, Holy Father, I love you. And the bishop said after she said that, she took the phone and laid it upon her chest as tears streamed down both cheeks. The bishop and the doctor look at me and say, Mother, what are you doing? What's going on? What did he say? She said, he told me that he loves me too. The bishop said it was extraordinary. Within a couple of days, Mother Teresa was back on her feet. She lived 5 more years. He said in that moment he believed it was the power of divine love working in human souls. You owe nothing to anyone but to love them. But my brothers and sisters, there's an aspect of love that I, like anybody else, would sometimes tend to just overlook or push aside or not want to deal with. It's what we hear in the first reading today, and it's what our Lord speaks of in the Gospel. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault. If he doesn't listen, bring a couple of witnesses. If he still doesn't listen, go to the church. And then our Lord says something very mysterious that we hear other times in the Gospel, but this time, who is he speaking to in this Gospel? Everybody. The disciples, a crowd of people. And so anytime he speaks to everybody, it's for all Christians all down through the ages. And he says this, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. How does that apply to you? He says it to Peter one time, but only to Peter. And then on another occasion, he says it to the group of the apostles. But here he says it to everybody. St. Augustine, writing in the early 5th century, said this. When he speaks to Peter, those words, it's obviously a gift solely for Peter. And down through the ages, we've understood what that gift is. The gift to proclaim the truth. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth, loosed in heaven. Anything you proclaim, if it's going to be in heaven, it must be true. The gift, when he speaks on matters of faith and morals, he will not err. What about when he speaks to the 12? What gift do they possess that we would not in loosing and binding? The gift we hear about after the resurrection. Whoever sins you forgive are forgiven them. Whoever sins you retain, they are retained. A gift handed on through all generations in the priesthood. But what about for everyone? My brothers and sisters, what happens when we go to someone and tell them their fault? That knowledge binds them. They have to act on that. A decision must be made. Do I change my way of life? And why do we bind someone? So that they can be freed. So that they can be loose. So that they can let go of that sin from their lives. It's a gift he's given to all of us. Or rather, it's a degree of charity, a degree of love that we are all called to, but it's one of the most difficult forms of love to practice. And if we ever do it without love, it will have the opposite consequences. If we tell someone their sin because we want to put them in their place, what good is that going to do? Or if it's out of self-righteousness, the same negative effect. It must be out of love. One of my best friends in high school shared with me during his senior year, up until that point, he had saved himself. He had been dating a girl for a period of time. They were in love. They thought we might spend our lives together, and so he went out and bought a pack of prophylactics. Before he ever had a chance to use them, one day his older sister was trying to find something in his room and came upon that pack. His sister went to him with tears in her eyes, holding those. And all she said was this: "You are called to so much more. God asks of you so much more." My friend shared with me that he saved himself to the day of his wedding because of those words of his sister. In my first parish assignment, down in Vallejo, one Sunday, and it's the most difficult thing that a priest does is to preach, because sometimes you have to say things that you don't want to say, you'd rather not say, people aren't going to like you if you say them. And I felt that I was called to speak about the church's teaching on marital issues, intimacy in marriage, talking about the beauty, the wisdom of the church's teaching, especially in regards to natural family planning. That the way God designed the human body, man and woman, to become one, it makes no sense within marriage. It leads to usury of one or the other. If anything is not natural, if anything is artificial. I give this homily, I was terrified to give it. Almost nobody said anything afterwards. It's one of these funny things where you give these homilies, you think, oh my gosh, everyone's going to make a comment, and nobody says anything. And then sometimes you think you totally missed the mark, and that was kind of a lame homily. Oh, Father, we love that. I give that homily. Within 2 weeks, the bishop calls me and says, I need you to go to another parish. A year goes by, and I'm up in Alturas, and a random phone call comes from Vallejo. Father, this is so-and-so. I'm one of the parishioners in Vallejo. Father, I don't remember if you recall when you gave that homily about marital intimacy. She said, I was sitting in the crowd that day and I was stunned. No priest has ever talked about such things. I didn't ever want to hear a priest speak of such things. I knew what the church's teaching was and I did not want to live it. She said, Father, I'm calling you today before I've even contacted my husband. That homily made me reflect greatly and pray deeply. And it took a few months, but I changed that practice in my marriage. And I'm calling you to let you know that because of that homily, there is a new eternal soul in the world. I found out today that I am pregnant. I just wanted to let you know. My brothers and sisters, every single one of us is called to bind and to loose, to assist souls to be set free. Let us ask our Lord that we might have that degree of charity, that we would be willing to follow His command.